What is optimal living? It's a way of living your best. Today, we learn more about what that means and how to get started on Equal Matters. Cal, the guitar hero, with the Equal Matters intro. My name, Rob Hunter. Today, Dr. Keiko Finnegan and Dr. Sera Sheppard join us. They founded a practice called Kinfolk Optimal Living in Scottsdale, Arizona. They specialize in helping you discover how to live optimally. Optimally means best, how to live your best life. Well, Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera helped me understand something very important on the road to personal freedom, that health is an individual journey, and ultimately, no one knows my body better than me. So even though I can't diagnose myself, I know when something isn't right. Optimal living starts by understanding not just that you are your own best health advocate, you're your own best advocate in general. Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera today talk about how to strive for balance. Balance to me is adaptability. In other words, the ability to adapt to what happens in life and take control of what you do about it. And in many ways, that starts with your health. When we think about health, let's simplify what it means. Health is you, your body, your mind, and your spirit, your soul, your personality, whatever you want to call your essence. Both Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera broaden my perspective about what health truly is, especially after my general practitioner. He told me, quote, most of what we do as doctors is guesswork. That's not a criticism. It's refreshingly honest, because that is what led me to wanting to become my own best health advocate. I first met Dr. Keiko seeking a second opinion about back pain. The traditional route was a doctor's visit and an x-ray, and it ended the usual way with the, there's not much we can do. Welcome to aging. Well, I thought there had to be another way, at least another opinion, so I went to Dr. Keiko. She was inquisitive, asked me questions about my lifestyle. That's that first clue that Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera treat health individually, because even though we as humans are 99.9% the same, that 0.1% represents all types of different biological reactions when you compare my body to yours. For hours, Dr. Sera has answered my many questions about how you consider your lifestyle to be part of your health. Lifestyle is all the things that you do: work, home life. Are you married? Do you have a partner? Do you have kids? Do you work out? That all contributes to your overall health. Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera's knowledge has empowered me to take more control of my health. My hope is over a series of conversations with them, you're going to learn more about how your body works and how you can adapt to the world around you. Dr. Keiko Finnegan and Dr. Sera Sheppard are chiropractors based in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can learn more at kinfolkoptimalliving.com. What I want to do today with you both, because you guys have been such a great resource for me in terms of my own health, is be a resource. Because the word optimal doesn't often go with health. So I would like you both to start defining, what does optimal health look like? Dr. Keiko, I'll start with you.
Well, optimal to me is mind, body, and spirit. It's not just physically optimizing who you are, it's mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually optimizing who you are. So it goes beyond the physical boundaries to me. And I think we all have a stored potential in us where we can always level up. We can always be better. There's no ceiling to health. And, a clean bill of labs doesn't say that you have optimal health all the time. So I think it's a really empowering conversation to have with our clients and with you included that, what is your definition of optimal? And mine is mind, body, and spirit.
Mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
Dr. Sera?
I would echo a lot of what Keiko says. So just a perfect alignment of where you are physically within your body, mentally within your mind, where you are within your heart, and having this perfect alignment of energy flowing in and through you so that your perfect health expression shows up in all of the relationships you can have in your life. So it's kind of what we're going to get into, this inside out approach where we are within ourselves reflects into where we are within our world, but it all starts with that perfect health from within and that alignment of mind, body, and spirit.
And most of that is inside our bodies, and we never see that, right? So we go to the doctor, we have elbow pain, and the doctor's like, all right, fine, here's a little pill, here's a little something you can do. You guys don't do that approach. Now, you guys are both chiropractors. So before we get an inside out health, a chiropractor does what exactly?
Well, chiropractor, our training and philosophy and art and science is we work with the nerve system, and we are all about facilitating life expression with the power of the adjustment. So it's really about clearing tension and tone from someone's nerve system, and that might look like cracking the back or cracking the neck, but our approach is slightly different. We actually don't use any cracking. It's very light and gentle, which you've experienced yourself. But really, it's optimizing the tone of the nerve system. And I think you could add to that too.
Yeah, so I mean, our nervous system is our perception system and our expression system. So we're perceiving all of these things through our nervous system, and that's creating an impact on the structure and the tone of your body. So when we work with someone, we're working with these tension patterns that have built up as a reflection of what this person is doing in their life. So if things that we're experiencing we're not fully integrating or adapting to, like the stressors of everyday life, they're going to show up and create tension patterns in our body. So we work with those tension patterns to help those process so that we can gain this greater expression within our mind, body, and spirit.
So let's talk about that integration, and let's talk about how it relates to inside out health, because I read that there are 14 systems in the body. So is that true? And is inside out health really about those systems?
So we want to look at the entire body, right? And so there are multiple 14 systems within the body, but they all need to be communicating.
Hold on, Dr. Keiko's laughing. She's laughing. Why are you laughing?
I love that you did your research. I actually don't even know. Are there 14
I know,
systems? We could really unpack that question.
Okay. Well, that's what I've never actually heard it put that way. And I'm sorry, Dr. Sera,
you're
for interrupting.
No.
But those 14 systems, and I don't have to try to remember them offhand, but like your digestive system, your immune system, your musculoskeletal system. That's why we bring doctors in, so I can actually pronounce the words. So I'm sorry, Dr. Sera, just please. So the 14 systems, trying to work them together.
Yeah. So if you think of like an orchestra, each system is going to be like a different instrument in the orchestra. So we need a conductor, which is the nervous system, to make sure all of these instruments are playing together in harmony with one another. But if there's something off with the conductor or an instrument is out of tune, it's going to mess up the entire expression of the song. So that's how we work with the body, is there's all these systems in the body, but they all need to be communicating with one another and working in harmony with one another.
See, now you know why I go to Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera for health advice, because I want to live optimal, because I want to live a long time, and I want to live healthy as long as I can. Now, I obviously can't control all of that, but I think that so much of inside out health, the term I would use is personal freedom. And the older I get, the more I think about that self-reliance. So in this context, health, it's not relying on the healthcare system, which I would describe, and many do, as a disease management system. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, it's very much a sick care model.
Yeah.
It's also like a Netflix. It's like a subscription service, because they try to get you in early and hooked forever. So you just give your monthly fees to get your drugs, and we'll call it that. Because even there's these weight loss drugs, the new ones, like Ozempic is like the main kind of one that I hear about. It's expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's, an appetite suppressant or whatever. I'm like, so, okay, if you want to do that, that's a subscription service. You guys would probably say there are other ways, no matter where you're at in your health, because the body that we have is the most stunning thing ever created.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
So if someone were to come in to see you guys at Kinfolk Optimal Living and hadn't paid attention to their health in a long time, or doesn't have the knowledge, or has tried to look on the internet and is overwhelmed, where do you start someone?
Every client's going to come in with a story. So I always like to hear the story. What are they expressing? What are they experiencing on a physical, mental, emotional, and a chemical level? What are they putting in their body? How's their energy? How's their sleep? So I think you get their story, and then you meet them where they are. I can't get everyone on the right diet, the right exercise plan the moment they walk in the door.
Wait, what? No.
Right? You are definitely not like that, right? Yeah. So it's our first date. We need to understand. We need to come to, a level playing of just understanding what each other wants and what each other expects. So I think it's it's open-ended, and you want to steer the ship a little bit, but you don't want to change everything in their life because that will bombard them and create more stress. And you don't want them to think they've been doing something wrong their whole life. So it's a gentle step-by-step process that we take.
Dr. Sera, that gentle step-by-step process is advantageous. Why?
Well, it's just a listening process, right? So you're going to listen to them and understand what's the priority, what's most important to them. And I think most importantly, how do they define optimal health? Because how I define it is going to be different than how you define it and how Keiko defines it. So understanding where they are, and then we got to climb a mountain together, right? And so it's just one step after another. We're going to climb this mountain, and you get to choose the mountain. And then when we get to the top, we get to look around and see all the other mountains that we get to climb together. And you get to choose the next one that's on that journey for you. So, it's this personal journey of transformation, and everyone's going to be starting in a different spot, but it's finding the practitioner that's going to listen to you and guide you along the way, not tell you, go up that mountain, because it might not be the right mountain.
And that's fascinating because my general practitioner, you go in, you get your yearly physical. So one year I'm talking to him, and he's like, most of what we do, and this is a guy who went to medical school and regular doctor, treats patients every 15 minutes, moves on to the next, the model. And he says to me, he goes, most of what we do is guesswork. And I was like, I appreciate that honesty because it goes back to that individuality. Because I think of the thumbprint or any of your fingerprints, and each one is unique. Like Dr. Keiko, Dr. Sera, your thumbprints are different from each other versus mine. So I think our bodies probably are the same, right? They're and this is just a wild guess, and you guys could both be like, no, Rob, this is why we're the doctors. But this idea that what might work for Dr. Keiko or Dr. Sera or you will work different for me. So how do you kind of walk through all of that in this concept of inside-out health care? Because that is working with what's going on inside your body that you can't really see, or as you mentioned, Dr. Keiko, you can't always see in a lab. So how do you guys pick up on little intricacies to help people find their right mountain?
So I think it comes down to the operating system of the human. And so our experiences are going to shape your operating system. So this shows up even in, let's say we have an experience where we get cut off in traffic. Someone might get really angry where another person is like, oh, I'm just going to slow down and it's probably stopping me from an accident in the future. We're going to have the same experience, but you have different reactions to that same experience. And that's going to show up in the operating system and how you even perceive and process information. And so if I show up and that experience comes in and I get angry, it's going to increase my heart rate. It's going to increase my blood pressure. It's going to increase the rate that I'm breathing. And so it has a huge physiological effect. So you're going to the doctor with those physiological effects that's really having to do with how you're perceiving life and what's that operating system doing and how is it functioning based on your personal, unique library of experiences that are just building within the system.
That's so fascinating because let's go back to this idea of stresses, right? Driving is definitely one because your eyes are doing things, your mind's doing things, and then whatever reaction you have to what your mind and your processing turns into some biochemical reaction. How does that impact your inside health? Like if you get angry in traffic every day because driving is insane, like what might happen? I know I'm asking you to kind of generalize here a little bit, but it's just the idea of how the body works because we're not really taught this anywhere in our lives effectively. So you guys have helped me. So in understanding that anger does what? Is it cortisol that shoots through your brains or through your whole body? What does that do to you?
I think anger, it's adrenaline, it's cortisol. You release certain neurochemicals that are going to trigger different neural cascades of hormones. But I think if you're doing that every single day, you're wiring and firing that same pathway for stress. So if you're in rush hour traffic, bump hour traffic, or you've got road rage, you're just wiring that same experience over and over. And it's like ruts in a road. If you drive on the same road and you create ruts over time, it's really hard to kind of get off the ruts. It's just easy. It's your go-to stance. And then, you get labeled with the personality of being an angry person. So,
Right.
it's, Sarah's completely right. It's where's your operating system at, and where are the patterns that are so ingrained in you that are dictating your life and creating those life experiences.
So that's that holistic approach, right? Because holistic is basically the whole, right? 360. So to go back to that, Dr. Sera, those inputs that you're taking are a massive part of our health, but we don't really, at least in a mainstream way, talk about what we're taking in and how we're interpreting that and how it impacts our health.
Right. And I mean, there's a layer to add to that is vitalism. So in the modern world, like holistic healthcare is really common, where it is taking every single part of you and putting it together to create this holism of who you are as a human being. But vitalism and how we practice in our studio adds that there's an element of intelligence, right? So there's this intelligence that's coordinating all of these different components of the body. And you could have a corpse and you have a living person. And what's the difference? The corpse has all the systems of the body, but it's missing that intelligence that's flowing through the body.
I've never heard it put that way. Because you think about that intelligence, and I've come to at least theorize that this body that I possess is 15 billion years in the making somehow, right? It started as a one little element somewhere and started to evolve and evolve and evolve. So we have like almost all of the best systems that have been created all together to create what essentially could be the life form that either saves the earth or gets us off the earth or whatever, right? Because everything's trying to survive. But in the modern world, it's almost like we've adapted our life in the last 100 years so much faster than the previous 2 million. So I imagine that that's a lot of the health challenge. So even though we live longer, we deal with more stresses, and that impacts us all individually in unique ways. Mm-hmm. So you guys try to work with the individual, me, to say, okay, let's take this little step here, see how it goes. Let's take another little step. Because that, I think, is another part of the modern rush society that we think, oh, just go to the doctor, it'll fix it. But you guys are advocating that the better fix is to take a slower approach to find what works. Go back to your mountain, Dr. Sera. Is that right?
Yeah, I think slowness is, we do move fast. And to your point, Rob, we are bombarded with sensory information. We're spending most of the time thinking about the past or stuck in the past or too worried about the future. Not many of us are living in the present moment. And so I love the 80-20 rule. It's like if you can work on the 20% of staying as present as possible, whether it's your morning routine or when you're with your partner, just really collecting that persona of being present in life, it slows you down. And I think if we allow ourselves to do more of that instead of the go, 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 pedal to the metal, always on the gas, taking breaks is actually really restorative for us. So we are a slow studio. Everything we do is slow. It's the theme of our life. It's like, we operate in slowness, not in a way where we're sluggish, but we respect that everything takes time and it's a process. And we like to be in that natural rhythm with it.
Yeah, and we're not about trying to fix you either, right? It's about the body healing. The body knows how to heal. It just needs that right information into the system. Because there's a spectrum of health. You're either moving towards optimal health, and that's like this never-ending horizon, or you're moving away from it towards symptoms, sickness, disease. So you have to understand, well, where's the momentum in my life? Is it taking me closer to health, or am I on a train to sickness, right? And so understanding where we are in that spectrum, and then taking a pause, taking a moment to slow down that momentum, gather where you are, and then understand that it's about healing. It's not about fixing, and the body knows how to heal.
So that's so important. The body knows how to heal. Dr. Keiko, you just mentioned rest. We'll have more with Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera in just a second. During conversations like this, you'll realize your voice is your main instrument. It's something you use every day in every relationship. Are you in tune with your main instrument? How do you tell? Your ideas are not getting buy-in. People aren't listening. And relationships are stale. Hi, I'm Rob Hunter. I'm a performance and communications coach. I know what it's like when the pressure's on. I know how to step up when it's time to perform. I know how to prepare to perform so that you're ready whenever your moment arrives. As a professional broadcaster, I've learned the art of performance, and I've learned that what you say is most important. And I want to teach you those things. If you're up for a promotion now or in the next couple of years, what you do now to start preparing will increase your chances when your opportunity arrives. And it doesn't always arrive when you want, which is why you got to be ready. Doesn't matter where you work or what you do. Learning to use your voice effectively gives you your ultimate advantage. Learn the techniques I've used in broadcasting to get me to #1 in the ratings, and then you apply those tools faster with one-on-one coaching. I'm going to give you all my secrets that have helped me stand out, build confidence, and I'll help you keep your voice in tune to maximize your advantage. Set up a free 20-minute consultation call at paintedporchstrategies.com/Rob or check the show notes for the link. As your coach, I'm going to help you learn faster. I'm going to help you fail faster. As your coach, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to see what you can't always see. All the great achievers have coaches. I have one too. Now's your chance to work right now on you. If you're looking to grow your career or foster stronger relationships, set up that free 20-minute call at paintedporchstrategies.com/Rob or check the show notes. Now, back to Dr. Keiko Finnegan and Dr. Sera Sheppard on Equal Matters, Optimal Health. So that's so important. The body knows how to heal. Dr. Keiko, you just mentioned rest. So I'll use myself as the sacrificial lamb here for a moment because I'm about to turn 45. I threw out my back, as you guys know, about a month or two ago, and that was the first time that ever happened. So the way I interpreted that was, okay, I've been taking in too much stress and not paying enough attention to my body. So I plan my life with all the things that I do and all the jobs that I have. What I don't plan is my own optimal living time, where I get to do something that I want to do, like whether it comes to you guys to get an adjustment, whether it is to relax on a Saturday morning, whether that is to go for a walk. I now realize I have to schedule my life around those things for me to be functioning optimally as I age. Is that something that you would recommend as well, as to sort of find those things that you like, those mountains, Dr. Sera, or a mountain, and find time to be on that mountain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great thing. I have to schedule it in. You know, if I don't have my 2-hour morning routine, and I know parents are probably saying, that's crazy. I don't have children, but I have my 2 hours, and that's my 20%. If I fill up my cup with the 20% of everything I love and what I'm passionate about and what really helps me regulate my energy, 80% of the day can go completely wrong. And I'm okay because I've filled up my cup first. So I think it's great to schedule that in. And if you don't have the 2 hours in the morning, well, how can you take little breaks throughout the day? Or how can you give yourself that time? And we don't give ourselves permission to take breaks.
True.
We compare ourselves to what other people are doing. And, you really have to give yourself permission and commit to it.
Do you mind sharing some of what's in your morning routine?
Oh, absolutely. I wake up, the first thing I wake up, I have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And I move. I have to move first, so I get circulation going. I'll go for a jog. I usually jump on the bike, and I'll probably do 20, 30 minutes of that. I love to sweat. To me, sweat is like I've transformed something, physiology, like it's a physical response that you can measure. So I like to sweat in the morning, and then I'll usually settle down, do some stretching, and then I do a meditation, and then I love to listen to podcasts, read books. I'm big into Audible books because I can move while I listen to them. And then I'll usually journal, and then I end with a meditation where I just allow downloads to come into my head and come from my body or messages. I call them thought flashes.
Oh, thought flashes?
Thought flashes.
Oh,
So,
I got to write that down.
yeah. So it's like a great time to just be in receiving mode and get to feel out like where my energy is, check in, and then I can do whatever I need to do.
I want to ask you about sweat, and Dr. Sera, I want to ask you if you have a morning routine. But so sweat is what? What is the process of these little beads of whatever coming out of my body?
Yeah, these amazing sweaty, salty beads.
Yeah.
It's physiological, right? It's input and output. So if your body is heating up from physical exercise, or this could be anxiety and stress too, right? Any experience that's stressing or engaging the system, my body's going to overheat. So in order to cool my body down, I'm going to release sweat. And that helps keep the body cool.
Are tears the same? Because I was I'll admit it. I don't know. I had gratitude tears like the other day. And I thought that was kind of cool because that's happening more and more to me where I'm actually getting happy about things. But I think, okay, the tear is a release of something, right? It's like snot or phlegm or whatever. The body is like, you got to get rid of this, so this is the best way to do it. Because we look at crying, especially as a man, oh, I can't cry. I'm like, no, it's literally something trying to come out of my body. Am I way off base here?
No, I think it's a great way to look at it. There's tears of sadness. There's tears that are healing. There's tears of a lacrimal duct needing to lubricate the eye, like there's different ways of looking at it. And I love that you're taking an energetic, foundation on it. It's, I had an emotion and that moved me to tears, So it's a release from the body. I think anything, sweat, tears, poop it out, pee it out, cry it out, all that is an expression of your system.
I love that. Dr. Sera, do you have a morning routine as well?
I do, and it's similar but different.
Oh.
Yeah. And this just, is a perfect example of how Keiko's so different than I am. And so we structure our mornings to honor that. So for me, I wake up, I start with reading with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and I often read the same book, actually.
Really?
Yeah, so I'll have there's a handful of books that I love that really start to prime my state for the day. So I'll read the same book multiple times over and over and over and over. And every time I read it differently because I'm changing, right? And so that's one of my favorite things is start with reading. And then I go into a movement practice, but it's very different than Keiko. So I do more of a Qigong flow on our back patio in the sun. And so for me, I find that I get trapped in my head a lot. And, in our everyday life, energy tends to rise with heat. So the quicker we move, the quicker the energy starts to rise into the head. And we can't really think our way out of that. So we got to settle the energy down into the body. So for Qigong, it's just a really slow, mindful meditation practice where I get to bring the energy from my head down into my body. And then I do about a 30-minute breathwork session. And then I do a meditation. And then I'm ready to roll.
So you guys make that the most important part of your day is what it sounds like, this routine. How long did it take you each to go through that routine and find all those things you like? Because, again, there's an element of patience in there that can be challenging for me and a lot of people in the modern way that we live. It's like, 2 hours, that sounds overwhelming. But it's like you said, okay, maybe it's not that 2-hour block. Is yours, Dr. Sera, 2 hours as well,
It's
give
about,
or take?
Yeah, that are a little longer.
Yeah, and that's okay, because I love like a nice slow morning. I've come to realize for me, I've been working like early mornings most of my career. Now I have this awesome spot in the afternoon, and it's meant so much to my own self help care, whatever you want to call it. But the 2 hours is still tough to be able to follow that every day. So back to that question about how would you recommend people tinker around a little bit and try things? Is there places people can go to learn about morning routines that you'd recommend?
That's a very good question because this is probably something we've been doing 7 years plus. And it was really our chiropractors, our mentors that all said you need to prime the pump before you serve. Like there's just no way around it. Otherwise, your practice might consume you and you'll be depleted because you're serving so much. So I think the morning routine has been like just trial and error, figuring out what you love to do. And it changes seasonality. Like it'll change in the winter. I don't want to get up and move my body when it's that cold. So it'll be a slower ease into movement. But, it's always something around movement, meditation, something that keeps us in the present moment. So I would urge people to, find out what other people are doing that have a morning routine and maybe pick up the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's my favorite book basically on building habits because essentially that's what you're doing. You're building a habit. It is so automatic for us. We get up, we don't even talk to each other. We go right into our routines. And it's because it's like an unconscious programming. We've done it so many times. It's pretty much automatic for us. It changes ever so slightly. But I would pick up that book because he has a great rule about the 2-minute rule. And he's like, if you just say you're going to do it for 2 minutes, that's something. And then you just start building momentum on that. Maybe you go to 4 minutes the next day. But don't start with 2 hours.
Right.
Don't start.
And even is there a spot like Dr. Sera where you would say if someone has a stressful job, you can find 5 minutes? So, people used to take cigarette breaks. Not as many people smoke, but maybe you could take a wellness break for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Go to the bathroom.
Yeah, whatever you can find private time, right?
Take a minute, take 2 minutes, focus on your breath if that's the only thing you have with you. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have the exercise equipment, or I don't have a journal, the perfect journal to write in, or they make up the excuses of not having anything external, but really it's about going internal. So use your breath, learn a really short movement routine that brings you back into the body, back into the present moment. Because when we are in that heightened state, right, where the energy is flying and we're rolling with the day, oftentimes the body is contracted, right? We have not learned how can we go through our day, how can we go through stressful experiences in a relaxed way. That is not something we learn in our culture. We contract and we hold, and then we hold those patterns for decades, and then we just over time are like, oh, I can't move my body like I used to be able to move my body because it's like casted in place. So it's so important to tune into the body and get those to melt away, and then you'll feel so good, and then you'll want to do it.
And that's just it, right? It's like finding that one thing that resonates with you, however it resonates with you. Maybe it is I got this tingly feeling while I was meditating, or I actually didn't think about anything when I was meditating, or I was able to watch those thoughts just kind of come and go. So it's finding that. For me, it's always been, because that whole concept was new to me, anything, until I was about 39. So like 6 years ago, I had this like kind of wake up call of, there's more to this. There's more that I can do and I can control. So it was like, all right, I tried meditation, and it took me like probably 5-6 weeks to really get into a rhythm with it. But I gave myself the space to do it, which I think is what you guys are advocating as well, right? It's like people come in to Kinfolk Optimal Living in Scottsdale. Maybe they're off track a little bit. And it's like, let's find that one thing. So here's something to try on top of the adjustment that you'll get here. Take this home with you. Come back in a week. We'll see where you're at. So is that an approach that seems that anyone could do? Because it does seem like that to me. It's just kind of pointing people in a direction.
Well, in regards to meditation, that can be really overwhelming for people. If you have no experience with it, and then you're sitting there and you're just like, what am I supposed to be doing? So maybe the word meditation can be a little intimidating. So you could use what Sera's saying. I'm just going to sit in silence and watch my breath go in and out. Or I'm going to, just sit in silence and watch the sunset. Like, that's meditation. Meditation means to become familiar with. So just sitting there and relating to whatever comes up for you, that's meditation. And sometimes if you go to a meditation class, like the time the bell dings at the end, that's the meditation, because sometimes you can be thinking the entire class. So I wouldn't get too worked up about like having to do what all the spiritual masters are doing. I think just relating to yourself and observing and being present with whatever arises and allowing whatever is there to be there is actually a great practice.
So, Dr. Sera, breath work. You do that in the morning. Dr. Keiko, you just mentioned it. What does that do to your body, right? Let's get it back to this inside-out health, because that's kind of this calmness that is so beneficial to the body. Why?
So the breath is one of the best ways to communicate to the nervous system. It's something that we have conscious control over, but it's also unconscious. So when we can override the unconscious and breathe in a certain way, we're sending information into our nervous systems. And then you can breathe in a way that it's going to be heightened. And that's when you actually shut off certain networks in the brain and you can get into that subconscious programming. Lots of people will feel the tingly, they'll feel emotions come up. There's big energetic releases in the breath work. It's super powerful, beautiful practice, and you're the agent of it. I mean, that is one way to really take your health into your own hands, is by learning to control your breath.
I read recently, there's a book called Breath.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I haven't finished it yet, but it's a fascinating study of how important breathing actually is. And Dr. Sera, you just mentioned too, we're kind of programmed not to think about it because it's so automatic. But the ideal breath, he says in the book, is 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. Mm-hmm. So if you could just think about that a couple of times a day and time that, right, is because that's what I try to do when I'm hyper stressed, is, all right, go back to the breath. What does the breath do? So I'm taking in the air around me. So Dr. Keiko, as I'm breathing that air in, is this a resource thing when it comes to my body? As in, there's a finite amount of energy. So if I'm breathing and focused on the breathing, I'm not using my brain as much, so that breath can work its way through the body to help me relax.
Well, James Nestor, the writer of the book, can probably speak to this more. But from my perspective, it's when you're consciously engaging with the sensory system, like breathing in and using that, you're lighting up different parasympathetic neural pathways in the body. So just by following the breath, there's something called vipassana, which is basically following the breath in, following the breath out. There's pranayama, closing the nostrils. So you're just intentionally creating awareness around the breath coming into the body. Now, I don't know the neural pathway, so to speak, maybe Sera does, of how that's engaging with things, but you're turning on certain parts of the nerve system, mainly the parasympathetics, by slowing down the breath and bringing it in.
Anything to add, Dr. Sarah?
Oh, I mean, the breath is a whole podcast in itself, There's so much to unpack with
Read
it.
the book, read the book.
Yeah, we will do that. We will make breath I would love to talk to you guys about that a little bit more. So, this idea of inside-out health, men versus women. Obviously, there's differences between men's bodies and women's bodies. So what are some of those differences outside of the obvious reproductive system? Hormones are obviously different. Men more likely to have higher levels of testosterone, estrogen for women. So and again, I know very little about women's health. You guys specialize in women's health from this inside-out approach. You guys often start with gut health. So let's talk about the differences between gut health in a man and gut health in a woman, and what contributes, if there is even such a thing as a difference, based on what we know about men's bodies and women's bodies. I just want to take a quick pause here with Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sera and talk about your main instrument, your voice. Miles Davis's instrument was the trumpet. Jimi Hendrix's was the guitar, and they performed in front of crowds all over the world using that instrument. No, you don't have to perform in front of the same crowds. You could be just at home. How you use your voice matters. Imagine using your voice as effectively as Miles used the trumpet or Jimmy used the guitar. First question is your voice in tune? Are you able to influence others towards positive action? Are you leading as effectively as you could be? Do you have the relationships at home that you want? If the answer to those are no or maybe, we do have an answer for you. It's my performance and communications course called Master Your Message. It's going to help you fine-tune your voice to make you both a better and more effective communicator and performer. Performance is where the competition is. It's where you rise above. It's where Miles and Jimmy stood apart from their peers. Master Your Message will help you stand out when you're performing. Now, performance is what gets you that promotion, what gets you the raise. Performance comes in your meetings and your assignments and your presentations. Master Your Message gets you set up for those perfectly. Because when it's Miles on stage, what you don't see is the hours that he put in practicing, getting those notes just right, because he was always working with his instrument. You'll do the same thing with Master Your Message. It will help you prepare to perform at your best no matter where your stage is. Master Your Message will help you build confidence, stay on point, and get noticed by the bosses. Master Your Message has 8 hours of content broken up into 8 modules. And don't worry, we made it fun. And you can go at your own pace. Master Your Message is going to teach you how to manage your distractions that knock your voice out of tune. You're going to learn how to get rid of filler words like like, and you know. You'll learn how to use storytelling to ensure your ideas leave an impact. You're going to learn about different communication styles that you can use to communicate with anyone about anything. You're going to learn how not to get offended by what others say. And you're going to learn how to give and receive critical feedback. So don't wait. Tune your instrument, your voice, to help you perform at your best with Master Your Message. Go to paintedporchstrategies.com/communication to get started. paintedporchstrategies.com/communication, or find the Master Your Message link in the show notes of this episode with Dr. Sera and Dr. Keiko as we continue now about your optimal health on Equal Matters. So let's talk about the differences between gut health in a man and gut health in a woman, and what contributes, if there is even such a thing as a difference, based on what we know about men's bodies and women's bodies.
I would say it's more of an individual difference, right? So it's not necessarily like a gender difference. It goes back to that, who's that person that we're looking at and how are they storing stress in their bodies. I mean, you could even look at personalized nutrition is becoming really popular right now. So people are using continuous glucose monitors. You see them on the tricep of the arm, and it's looking at how is your body responding even to the food that you're eating in terms of changing your blood sugar. So for example, let's say we each have a banana. Your blood glucose might spike, mine might not change, and Keiko's might not change. Whereas if we have a cookie, yours might come down and mine might spike and hers might spike. So we're each going to respond to food differently, and I think that has the biggest impact on the gut. And it also has to do with where are we storing stress. I think lots of women, they tend to hold things in their abdomen, in that vulnerable area of the body. Men tend to store it more in the low back. So there are these like stereotypes, if you will.
But they don't apply to everybody.
No.
Dr. Keiko, so let's think about advice you would give to someone that comes in about their gut health. Because, again, we don't talk about that really much at all in the normal medical sphere. Because, again, most of the time, right, the health disease management system is what's on the outside, here's something to do, it should fix the problem. But the better longer term is to sort of work through this on your own. So how do you tell if your gut health needs work? What are some of the signs that might show up that you might look for?
When I'm unpacking health in general, the digestive system does get missed a ton. And I just think in our modern world, people do not eat whole foods anymore. Most of it's processed, most of it's packaged, most of it has preservatives and chemicals in it. So I always ask, what do you eat? Do you cook at home? Do you eat out? How often? And, ask what they really eat. Like, what's a typical meal for you look like? So I would see what their eating habits are like in general, and then how food actually makes them feel too. Like, what's their relationship to food? I think women especially, we have these funky relationships with food. As we grow up, you're not skinny enough, you're not tall enough, you're not toned enough. So there's a lot of mixed messaging happening with food and women, and I would just assess that with them. And then as far as digestive regulation, there are things that you can take supplementally, but before you pour supplements into someone, you really need to get them eating whole basic food and getting back to the foundation of that, getting them back into the kitchen. And I think that's just a conversation that you have to have with them.
Why is this a passion for you both? Because to do the work that you guys do, you have to love it. Because there's a lot of schooling. It's a huge decision to go through that schooling. It's a huge expense to go through that schooling. So, Dr. Sera, did chiropractic, was it a calling for you? Was there's sort of this sense that this is the space for me?
Yeah, so my introduction into the power of the adjustment in terms of chiropractic really came to me when I was traveling. I was in a car accident. I hurt my neck. It was not ideal. I ended up going back to Canada, and about 6 months later, I got a whole host of different symptoms. So I was getting headaches and eye pains and chest pain, and I was throwing up everything I was eating.
Wow.
And it got to the point where I was studying kinesiology, and anytime I exercised, I would faint. And so I was seeing all these medical doctors. I literally saw every specialist because I was only 21, and all of the doctors were saying, I have a brain tumor or a heart defect. I just can't find it.
Wow.
And so I was babysitting for this chiropractor, and she's like, you have to come to this seminar. There's this guy coming from Australia. I just want him to check you. And so I remember walking in the room. He looked me up and down, and he asked me, when were you in your car accident?
Wow.
And I was like, I wasn't in a car accident, because it had been so long that I hadn't even related the two together. And so he checked my nervous system, he checked how my spine was moving, he checked how my arms were moving, he put everything that was showing up on the surface of my body in terms of a pattern into a story that made sense, and it turned what was wrong with me into what was right with me. Then he could put this input into, my first adjustment was the back of my knees.
Wow.
He adjusted my knees. I went home and I slept for about 15 hours. Mm-hmm. And the next morning I woke up and I didn't have a headache. And I was like, oh my God.
Finally some relief.
About 1.5 years of these everyday migraines. And so I was like, I'm going to jump on my bike and go for a bike ride. And I went on my bike and I haven't fainted. I haven't had any of those symptoms since that one adjustment.
Wow.
So that was a turning point for me. And I have to learn this. I have to share this with a whole bunch of people, because why is it that it took me a year and a half in a country that we have so much access to healthcare this long to figure out that I just needed a little adjustment in the back of my knees to bring balance and harmony back to every single system in my body, because they're not disconnected, you know? When I was going through that, you go to the GI specialist, you go to the heart specialist, you go to the neurologist, and they don't communicate, right? But in the body, they all communicate.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this literally, you had an experience of an inside-out healthcare, because I want to go back to what you said about storing stress. So our body does store the stress. You guys probably see this in multiple different ways. And Dr. Sera, for you, you were experiencing that after the car accident. So even though it was 2 years after your car accident, that stress was still stored in your body. Do adjustments help move that stress to help release it?
Yeah. So it's almost like that car accident was an input of forces into my body that changed the structure of my body. And it just stayed in that holding pattern. And so over time, you're just on this momentum away from optimal health, because the structure of the body has changed, therefore the function has changed. So over time, that it just kind of breaks down more and more and more and more and more until you start to get a symptom, which is just a message from the body saying, hey, there's something going on, there's something out of balance, and we need to put the right information back in, correct the structure of the body to affect the function of the body to bring the body back into balance.
One could almost say that things happen for a reason, right? And you get in a car accident to show you, I don't know, I'm just putting a lot on it, but I've kind of looked at the patterns of my past, and I now realize why a lot of the things happened, even though at the time I was like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
But 10 years later, I'm like, oh, I get it. So again, back to the path. So you have this, I don't want to call it an awakening, but a light bulb of, this made such a difference in my life. It can make such a difference in other people's lives, because, you know, when you're in a car accident, you're traveling 30, 40, 50 miles per hour. It's not a speed in which the human body really is supposed to go.
Right.
But yet we do, and that obviously causes, what did you call it? A holding pattern of this, the way the body worked was changed. So taking that, you took what steps to say, all right, I'm going to become a chiropractor?
So I went to school for a very long time.
Now, you go to like regular university first, and then you go to chiropractic school?
Yeah, so I got a degree in kinesiology.
Which is like muscle movement?
Yeah, it's like physiology, I guess, here in the United States. And then went to chiropractic school. Yeah.
What is chiropractic school like? Because Dr. Keiko, you went as well.
I did go
Obviously.
as well. It's very different than like an undergrad. You know, I got my bachelor's in physiology, so it's just a different. It's a culture experience, because you're going in and you're not just learning information. It's people are viewing the world very differently. So to us, you know, some of our best friends are from chiropractic school, and we all get each other on like just a personal level through that experience. And it's long days. It's long days. It's long nights. You have 5-8 tests a week. It's a lot, but it's so rewarding at the same time. I mean, I would, you know, student loans in general, like I don't regret it at all. Like every penny, it was so worth it. And yeah, it was a great experience for both of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like such a great holistic approach to say, okay, I know I have to take on these student loans, but I met a bunch of awesome people. Did you guys meet in chiropractic school?
We did.
See, and there's that too, right? Now you guys have your practice. You're doing it a completely different way than even most chiropractors do, which is still beneficial to a lot of people, because the chiropractic word has a lot of weight in modern society. I look at it this way. I've been covering politics for 25 years, so I understand that every system that's in place has a lobby and has a bureaucracy that is geared towards protecting it, because there's a ton of money in it. So it's always acting to protect the money. So I understand that part, but that gets used to sometimes label you both, Dr. Sera and Dr. Keiko, as, oh, they're not real doctors. But you told me something way back in the day, Dr. Keiko, so that chiropractic school is essentially medical school. It's the same learning process. It's just what we do, the tools that we use are different than, say, your general practitioner. It is because I think you said, I can diagnose you. Like, I know how the body works. So how do you, I guess, work with that label, or do you just not pay attention to it and say, look, we're here for you if you want to try it, and that's that?
You know, I actually had, Kinfolk was Kinfolk Chiropractic, and we changed it to Kinfolk Optimal Living because we are not the stereotypical Western chiropractor. It's a very different experience. You don't feel like you're in a doctor's office. We don't wear white coats. And, you know, we can diagnose. We have it in our scope legally, but we choose not to put labels on people. We'll talk about systems that are happening and definitely symptomatology, but I'm not going to stick a label on someone. And, you know, it's different how we practice. So I don't think we do use chiropractic. At the end of the day, we are chiropractors, because a chiropractor is really someone that is connecting man-woman physical with man-woman spiritual. So it's an energetic type of chiropractic. And we even say we're chiropractors that don't crack.
Yeah.
And that seems, I don't know, it's landing for a lot of people because you're either into that or you're not into that.
Right.
And I want to work with someone who's open to working with me in that capacity.
So tell me about your journey then, Dr. Keiko. So we have Dr. Sera's kind of moment of, oh my goodness, I had this adjustment that I didn't faint after I worked out. I could ride my bike. So what's your story?
I didn't have the car accident.
Which is okay.
The
too.
car on purpose. I did not have the car on purpose. I mean, Sera has it's a breathtaking story. You know, I've heard it so many times, and every time I hear it, I'm humbled by the body, and I'm humbled by what we get to do every day. My story is more of an emotional story. You know, I was seeing a chiropractor while I was in chiropractic school, and, you know, I'm learning everything. I'm going through chiropractic, and I was questioning, remember, like, is chiropractic for me? Because I feel like if I just do yoga every day and eat well, I'll be fine. I don't need a chiropractor. I'm healthy. And I was having just this relationship issue and not in a good place. And I went to my chiropractor. I laid on her table. And it's like she could sense something was off. And as soon as she put her hands on me, I let out all the tears that I could, you know, speaking to your tears, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just such an emotional experience, but I really feel like her adjustment, her sense of holding space for me allowed me to express what I needed to express. Because clearly I was suppressing it and holding it back and stuffing it back inside me. So it's an experience I'll never forget. And it was the first adjustment that I literally felt so connected to my emotions and what I was actually experiencing in my body. And it was just, after that opened up, it was like my whole life opened up a little bit. My perception opened up, my feelings and talking about my feelings, all of that opened up. And I ended the relationship because it awakened things in me. And I can't put words to it. I can't really explain it, but I remember that day. I'm like, if this can do that for me, I would love to be the person that can do that for other people. And so I stayed in chiropractic school.
Well, it's fascinating. You both had similar experiences. So I'll relate one. I was on your table, Dr. Keiko, and I'm laying there, eyes closed, and all these colors came into view, and I'd never experienced that before, and it was really kind of cool. And I don't necessarily even know what it was, but it was as if you could almost sense more around you and more of how everything is aligned in a way if you allow it to be aligned. Body, mind, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, to go back to what you guys started with. So that's, I think the power of chiropractic is that connection. Is that connection to yourself, which I know sounds weird to a lot of people, but I can attest to that. As someone who is out of touch with myself for 39 years of my life, this 6-year journey I'm on to try to figure this out and figure myself out is so enhanced by that because stored stresses. So Dr. Keiko, all of that, I assume, all those stresses you took in, bad relationships, all the stresses of studying for hours and hours and hours, it's stuck in your body, and that adjustment helped let it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for you, you know, some people come in and we're seeing black and white, and then the lights go on, and now we can see Technicolor.
Yes.
So it does open up that sensory system to where now you have a spectrum of really taking in your experience a lot deeper.
So, Dr. Sera, tie this into Inside Out Health, stored stress, because it could do numerous things to numerous individuals. So I'm going to have stored stress a different way than Dr. Keiko is that you are. So how do you work to try to find that stress in people to try to help them release it the same way your car accident stress was released?
Right, so that the information's coming in and the body, I mean, I feel like in our world, we think of the body as so mechanical. You know, I'm just going to get my hip replaced or my knee replaced, and it's just a part in my machine. But the body is this living, breathing bioarchitecture that is constantly like adapting and molding to all of the experiences that are happening in our life. And so when we have something come in that causes stress, usually there's a contraction that happens and we can see it. I mean, people lay on the table and you can see the pattern go through the system. It's just, I mean, with trained eyes and trained hands, and then you can feel how it's changed their breath throughout their system. So certain joints are going to lock up, certain joints are going to be compressed, there might be a torque or a rotational component to it. And it's creating this tension within the body, which then shows up in every system of the body. So going back to even your perception, you know, when you're stressed, let's say a bear is walking right in front of you.
That'd be stressful.
That would be stressful. You're not going to take your eyes off the bear, right? Your perception is going to get so narrow where, you know, the best things might be going past you and you're going to completely miss them because you're so focused on the bear. So when we can connect to the system and create a sense of ease, a sense of peace, bring balance back into the body so that there's not that tension or that holding pattern, the body can all of a sudden expand, but so does your perception. Right? It's not just the body, it's also the mind, it's also the heart. It is in the body. So we're just going to have this increased bandwidth or window of tolerance to what stresses come in. You know, something that come in that used to be stressful, that's no longer stressful because we're more adaptable as a human being.
How do you adapt as a human being, Dr. Keiko? What types of things beyond getting adjustments make sense to try?
You know, I love to push myself physically. So I like physically climbing mountains and exerting myself or trying new challenges, you know, signing up for a race or doing a workout that I've never done before. So I love to experience that side of my adaptation to see what my body's really capable of. And I love reading books like that, you know, David Goggin. I mean, there's just so many people that have done insane things. I mean, it blows my mind what our bodies are capable of, not just on the physical side, because there's a huge mental, emotional component that goes into those physical exertions. We have a friend that's actually crossing the Antarctic in 100 days, right?
110. Yeah.
110 days without any assistance.
Wow.
And I mean, you want to talk about someone who knows about adaptation. You know, he's putting himself in probably one of the most sensory challenging environments on the planet, right? There's no night. It's all day. So he has no nightness, and he's going to self-assist and cross it.
Wow.
And he leaves in October. And it's just, that's the power of the human being, is we can choose to engage in experiences like that. So I think we're constantly always adapting, but I love to adapt in that way too.
Yeah, because what does that do to your body, Dr. Sera? You say adaptability, right? So you push yourself, you become a little bit stronger. So the 110 days to cross the Arctic, he's going to train, as soon as he, she, whatever, is going to do this. So is it, again, those little steps that you do and say, okay, I tried this workout. I haven't worked out in a while, so my body's a little sore. That's a good sign. I'm going to try it again. It's that part, isn't it? That try it again,
Yeah.
knowing that there's an end goal, if you will, or maybe there's not an end goal except to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, you don't bench press 10 pounds and the next day you bench press 500, right? There's that process where every single day for the first week you bench press the 10 and then you up it to 12 and then you up it to 15 and then maybe you jump to 25. So there's this evolution and there's this growth that we see in nature all around us. We are no different from that. I mean, nature is reflecting to us our own adaptability. Trees are a perfect example of that. You know, when we're feeling grounded and centered and rooted in who we are, we're very adaptable. The winds of life can come in that tries to push us over, but no, we stand strong in who we are. But when we feel disconnected from ourselves, I mean, we're just everything and everyone's pushing us around, right? And so it's building that trust with yourself, building that foundation, and then trusting and being consistent, showing up every single day and being okay with the 1% improvement. But most of us were like, oh, we want the 20% improvement overnight. That's not really how it works, unfortunately.
Even my own mental health, right? I was diagnosed with depression twice. First time I'm 19, I don't know what to do, so I do the antidepressant things. I don't like those, so I stopped taking them, and then I just kind of avoid the issue for about 20 years. When I made a decision, and it was a terrible decision, and I was like, what am I doing? Oh, okay. Finally, that second time was kind of a, I have to look at things a different way because I'm making all these excuses and allowing that to be the reason that's driving my decisions. But it didn't happen overnight. Like people, like your mental health, like for me, took years. I had to try all these different things out, different tools. Like that worked a little bit. Let's try this one. But doing that work has been the best work I've ever done in my life is sticking with it. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to health, it's kind of it's that same thing. You got to find maybe that David Goggins, Dr. Keiko, that voice in your head that stop being a bitch, keep going. Whatever it takes for you to keep going. I only say that because Dr. Goggins said that in the video I was watching once. He's like, he was running along and he's doing this and he's doing this. And he goes, I was talking about this and this and this. And I just realized I was being and I was like, okay, I don't necessarily need to talk to myself like that, but I tried that out to see, does that work for me? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So how do you get people to keep trying? Do you just try different things? You mentioned listening, Dr. Sera, because listening is information, right? It's intelligence. So then you can say, oh, I found a block here. Let's work with that block.
Yeah, I feel like so many people get locked in their belief systems, right? Where this is the way it is. So I love just being asked the question, well, what's another way of looking at that? What's another story you could tell about this certain situation? And then that's going to just open up their mind to a possibility of there being another thing, another way of looking or perceiving. For example, my car accident. If I stuck to that narrative my entire life, I would never get the gift of it. But if I change it to a car on purpose, I get to integrate and process, and then I learn and grow from that experience. So I go from a victim to someone who's empowered by it. And I always think either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. You can't have both in your life, right? And so when you can approach life, wow, like everything is a miracle, the ups and the downs, the good things and the bad things, and how can I expand my mental adaptability to be able to look at one situation from 15 different vantage points. And if you have a hard time thinking of a different vantage point, think of someone you really look up to and be like, how would they look at it? What story would they say? And when you can step into that perception, you just experience the same experience differently. And then you do that 12 more times, and all of a sudden the whole weight of that situation is just dissipated because you kind of lessen the tone of it, if you will.
Well, and it's just so fascinating, Dr. Sera and Dr. Keiko, because there's an element of time to all of this, right? To mention your morning routines, there's an element of time that you can give yourself to be able to handle stress, work on being able to handle more stress. So what are those morning routines, and what has taken that time, Dr. Sera? How does that impact my inside health? So now that I'm finding better stress management techniques, I'm finding ways to fill my bucket in the morning by reading or moving or whatever. How is that helping my body?
Well, you're building that connection to your body, right? And so that when the whispers of the body come up, you hear them. So many people, they have another cup of coffee, they drink a glass of wine, they do all these things that just numb their body. They disconnect from their body. They watch hours of TV just being entertained externally, when you can spend that time, going inward, checking in with yourself. I mean, you have to make the time. If you don't have the time, you have to make the time, because one day your body will make it for you, and then it will be more difficult.
And I think that's exactly what happened to me when I threw up my back. Your body's like, listen, bruh, you've been working hard, and we're going to make you relax.
Right.
And I was like, okay. Is illness the same, Dr. Keiko? Is it your body's way of saying something's out of balance, we need to get something out of the body, so we're going to make you chill out for 3 or 4 days?
Absolutely. The most common example is the fever. Why do we get fevers? Your body's trying to heat it up enough to kill a virus or a bacteria. So a fever is very much on purpose. This body is really smart. And the fever started way before you even started feeling hot. That's how intelligent that process is. So why do I want to, impinge on the fever of a natural process and give you an Advil or a Tylenol to actually take the fever down when it was actually doing something very innate?
So if you do that, you're suppressing your body's own ability to handle whatever needs to be handled.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we see this with kids, parents, I understand with our children, kids have different things with fevers and you don't want to see it go from, 98 to 104 very quickly. But there's a process. And if the fever is just gradually increasing over time, the child's okay. The system is working at a good level. So I think with fevers, it's just we blow things out of proportion and we don't give our body the opportunity and we don't trust it enough to do what it's designed to do.
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm glad you brought up kids. So let's say there's a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, and they have a fever. And again, how we've been trained is, fevers are bad. Let's fight that, thinking it helps fight whatever the fever's fighting. So we think that the pill, whatever, is going to do it better than the body. Does that add a stress to a child at a young age versus letting their system at that age figure itself out or learn or adapt, or, Dr. Sera, to be able to grab those stressors, right? Is that something parents should consider? I mean, there's obviously got to be a certain point where, like, okay, we need to have medical attention if it gets to a certain point. But if it's 98, 99, 100, here's the Advil, is that a stress?
Yeah, I would say it is. It's a chemical stress. You're actually giving the liver a little bit more work to do. So now this child has to detox some chemicals, and then you're playing with the natural ability of the body. And maybe you send that child to school because now their fever is down when actually they should be at home getting rested and well.
That's another thing. How do you encourage, Dr. Sera, people to rest? Because we don't want to rest. This is the go, 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 go world. I got 9 things to do. I can't slow down.
Yeah, you got to slow the mind down getting into the body.
But that adds a stress too, right? Because It's like my mind doesn't shut off, so that's got to have some type of reaction inside my body.
Yeah, it is. It's going to create this like fiery go, 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 where you have that quickness in the mind. It just shows up in the quickness of your breath, the quickness of your heart, the quickness of even the blood pressure increasing, or the tonicity of the body itself. It's just in a heightened sense of contraction. So the first thing, you can't outthink your way out of that. That's
the first Canadian I heard, by the way, right there.
Oh, really?
Oot.
Oot. Oh, I gave myself away.
So let's talk about nutrition in terms of this too, because nutrition, we talked about a little bit. I want to relate it to gut health, particularly for women, because, for example, my partner, Mrs. Hunter, she doesn't want to eat a lot. She's very rarely hungry. We've done all kinds of doctor's appointments to try to figure it out. So there's an imbalance there somewhere, and it's hard to find. So, we don't eat too poorly. I eat worse than she does. So she always, her whole life, has done mostly the right thing. The occasional Oreo, like anybody has. So when you have someone in a situation like that, and you're trying to look at inside out health, nutrition, gut health, how do they tie together? And if you're eating those processed foods, which most of us do, what do those chemicals do to your gut health?
So just to understand the tube, let's talk about that, because so let's say you eat something, you chew, you swallow, goes through the stomach into the small intestine. It's amazing. The digestive system is amazing. So there's literally one cell between what you're eating and the inside of your body. So you have all of these single cells lined up that make up that small intestine wall. And then you have a mucous membrane on top of it, which is your secondary barrier. So when you're eating processed food, you're eating things that are causing inflammation, you're going to damage that mucous membrane, which is going to make it a little bit thinner, which is going to put more stress on that one cell thick wall. And then you need certain nutrients to be able to replace these cells. So the cells in the digestive system replace every 5 days. And so that's one thing I don't like about diagnosing someone is you're kind of, creating this standstill in their physiology of, I have this one thing, where it's like, okay, you have it for a moment, but what about tomorrow? Because tomorrow the cells are going to be replacing, right?
Wow.
So every single day...
I've never heard a doctor say that, by the way.
Every single day the cells are replacing. So in the digestive system, it's every 5 days you have a new one, but those cells need certain nutrients to create healthy cells. So if you're not eating high quality food, you're not fulfilling your nutrient requirements. So therefore, the quality of those cells is going to be diminished. And then you don't have the glue that's going to hold the cells together. So then they start to separate, which can lead to leaky gut, which now particles of food are going through that barrier and activating the immune system, traveling in the blood where it's not supposed to be going. So now we have a heightened immune response, which over time can lead to an autoimmune condition.
Was
Right?
that mind-blown emoji? That's what I need right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it's also stress, right? So now we have increased inflammation in the digestive system. So the brain is going to look down at the GI system and say, oh my gosh, Rob, you have a fire in your belly, right? I need to send out
Stop looking at it.
I need to send the ambulance and the fire department and the police. So your cortisol is going to go up, right? To put out that fire. Cortisol is not a bad thing. You just want a good rhythm with your cortisol. And when we have increased cortisol, our melatonin goes down, so now we're not sleeping well. It just creates this whole cascade of imbalance in the body. So it might, and then you have that increased inflammation that's then going into the brain, crossing that and creating inflammation in your brain that's showing up as brain fog, or I can't think clearly, or I'm having memory challenges. When really it's like you're eating poor food and you're causing inflammation in your GI, which is compromising that barrier, increasing the immune activity, increasing inflammation. And then that system talks to all the systems of the body. And fires aren't a bad thing. They're good if they're in the fireplace, but we don't want that fire spreading and burning the whole house down.
So, and it's amazing, too, because it's a slow process. Because, again, our bodies are super amazing things that can process all these things. As we've lived a more convenient life, especially over the last 100 years. So eating became faster, everything became faster. So the challenge is, a lot of times it's not noticeable. So the inside-out health approach, the challenge is, if you don't pay close attention, it's all of a sudden something's way wrong.
Right.
How do you manage that, Dr. Keiko?
I think how we personally manage it is we're very structured about how we eat, and it's a huge priority, Sleep, movement, and eating. I mean, spirituality, like those are our top 4. So I think for us, it's non-negotiable. Like if I have the choice, it's non-negotiable. And to Sarah's point, I mean, that whole cascade of our physiology working is so beautiful and it's so innate and it's so intelligent in the body. But you could eat organic food, grass-fed beef, the best food on the planet. And if you're stressed out in a 9-to-5 job, guess what? You don't assimilate any of the nutrition from that food, or at least very little of it. So I think it's not just what you're eating, it's your relationship to, how your body is orchestrating and what stress levels you have. So I think it's something for people to consider.
So it's almost like you have to look at your whole life, right? And you have to say, okay, because my challenge, just again, I'll use myself as the lamb here, is I don't spend enough time prioritizing how I eat. So this is a habit that started when I was a kid because I was on the go. So I'd stop at Burger King, McDonald's, and eat. And, my 16-year-old body can handle a lot better than my 45-year-old body can. Or it probably can't. It's just, it's my body's newer. So it's like still generating new cells. And that's it. Because isn't really aging, it's about how our cells kind of replicate, right? Because they replace all the time, like you said, Dr. Sera. So the stresses... they kind of hit these cells with certain signals that makes it harder to reproduce, or maybe it's misshapen. I don't know if that's the appropriate word or not. Is that why this is so important? Because it does directly tie into the aging process?
Yeah, so it's going to affect like the energy of the cell and the mitochondria. So if you're replacing cells faster, you're going to, you're going to use more energy. It has effect on the genetic material every time you replicate. It's going to take nutrients to create these new cells. You also have a lot of waste products that you have to worry about, right? So there's several factors in terms of what has to happen for a new cell to be born. And oftentimes it's just that wear and tear. We're not taking care of the body. And so, we're asking let's say a cell that's functioning at 50%, we're asking it to replace one that at 100%. And that's when the challenge comes in. It's like that cell's not healthy itself. So how is it supposed to make something that's even better than it?
So is there a point of no return? Or is our body so fantastic that even if you're 45 or 55 or 65, you can start reversing, maybe that's not the right word, managing by handling how you eat and how you manage stress?
I mean, I always think there's a potential to regenerate, until there's no electricity left in the body and they cannot revive you with, electric pads. Then yeah, I think there's always a potentiality. We don't know. That's the thing. We're still learning about the body. So I wouldn't take that away from anyone. You can, but you have to change something. And I can't do it for you. So whether it's changing how you eat, whether it's changing how you see your body, these are just small things that you can start to do to shift how your physiology is responding to your energy.
I love the old 1 degree shift because it doesn't sound like a big deal, but the further you go, like if you're leaving from Phoenix and you want to go to like Detroit, a 1 degree shift will probably put you wherever, Pittsburgh or something like that. Is that what we're talking about, Dr. Sera? Just that slight 1 degree shift?
Yeah, it's that 1% every single day that compounds. It's just that compounding interest in terms of your healthcare. But it's also important, I think, to not get caught up in the physicality of the cell, because you break a cell down to its smallest particles and then you look within it and it's actually 99.99999% just empty space. So the cell is actually mostly energy, and it just has these particles floating around within it. So getting to the essence of who you are and the energy that you're holding on to, that's going to dictate how these cells are functioning. That's why I think the power of the adjustment is so critical in terms of even my own experience, right? I was able to get into almost like this energetic holding pattern as well, which changed instantly, the physical structure of my system. So, we're mostly energy, we're mostly vibration. So when we can tap into that, I think anything is possible.
So it's almost like your car accident was an earthquake. And remember, in 1994, I think it was, Northridge. And I remember looking when I was a kid, those roads that buckled.
Yeah.
So you couldn't drive down that road. Is that similar to what happens to a lot of bodies is whatever our trauma or stress or earthquake, so like the energy doesn't flow the right way.
Right.
Yeah, we usually call it as a fragmentation.
Almost sound like half competent here. So let's talk about some examples of whole foods too. And where could we start? Because I'm going to guess that whole foods, just based on what you said, Dr. Sera, cells are mostly energy. Those whole foods make it easier to get the energy you need out of the food to help run your body. Right.
We want food with one ingredient.
So the clue, one ingredient is the best. So if it's chicken, it's chicken.
You're right.
But not injected with whatever stuff that many places give them. Well, yeah. So one ingredient. So like broccoli's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Vegetables are great because they have photosynthesis. So they turn light into energy. So you're literally, if you're eating vegetables, you're eating light source energy. And that's huge.
Because it's natural.
It's natural.
And that's what humans used to eat 1 million years ago.
Yeah.
Almost like it was designed that way.
Until we messed it all up.
Yeah, no. Well, and for good reasons, right? It's like you advance and we don't have to live in caves anymore and we have safe structures. So it takes, actually, this is a whole nother, let's dive into it. Why not? Fear. Fear is a stress. And we've taken a lot of the fear out of our everyday lives with structures, with systems to drive. So the fear is still there. It just manifests in different ways. So if the fear is a self-doubt fear, that's causing a stress on you and your body and your cells and reproduction of those cells?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think, is it fear of falling? Fear of falling is the only form of fear that's inborn within us. Every other fear we have is learned. So some experiences come in and you have learned to fear that, which is really interesting, right?
That is, I've never heard that. That's fascinating.
It's the only physiological real fear.
Huh. Not even of tigers or getting eaten. Nope. The falling.
Yeah, because you had to learn that a tiger is scary.
That makes sense.
And some people might not feel fear around tigers.
Back to the individuality, right?
Right.
So taking a step in a whole food is to try to find a food with one ingredient that you like. And you say, okay, I'm going to add this into my routine, and then you find a second one, and you say, okay, now I'm going to add this one. Or do you advocate? I guess you have to advocate what works for people. But my challenge is, I know what to do, I just don't do it.
Well, that's another conversation.
So what do you guys else work on? What kind of programs do you have that people can get involved in? Because I know you work primarily with women, even though I love to go to Kinfolk Optimal Living. It's not specifically for women, but you guys are women. So you specialize in gut health for women. Where can people get involved in that so they can get their gut health in order and help learn how to deal with stress a little bit better?
I would just encourage you to come into the studio so we can assess the nervous system first. So oftentimes we try and optimize the communication system of the body. And then if it's a good fit, we chat about some of the programs we offer in our office. It's kind of group-based for women where we focus on just resetting the body using food, whole foods. And then we teach you a lot of just strategies that we use in our life just to optimize mindset, optimize routine, get you sleeping better, feeling more confident in your body.
So it's, in a sense, optimal living, to go back to the 14 body systems. This is like our 15th system that you want to create as a human so that your 14 systems can work optimally for you. Is that right?
Yeah. The nerve system is the master operating system. So
that's the one that connects it all. So that's the one you guys pay the most attention to because everything ties in that. What you eat ties in your nervous system. What you think, what you breathe, what you do at work, how many fights you get into with your partner or your friends, how many debates, all these things. So coming up with that structure and that system is that optimal living.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's optimal expression of the nerve system.
Thank you to Dr. Keiko Finnegan and Dr. Sera Sheppard from Kinfolk Optimal Living in Scottsdale, chiropractors who don't crack. They're doctors who encourage you to live optimally for you. Both will join us again soon. Visit kinfolkoptimalliving.com for more. Next week, Arizona State Representative Annalise Ortiz joins Equal Matters. She's a first-term progressive Democrat who knocked on 10,000 doors while running for office. Bottom line is she cares about people. So next week, with Representative Annalise Ortiz, we'll learn more about why she ran for office and more about the issues that most impact her constituents. Issues like affordable housing and lack of accessible health care. Issues that don't really get a lot of mainstream attention. Subscribe to Equal Matters and you'll get that episode as soon as it's published and all the other ones as well. This is Equal Matters. Conversation is where we are equal. It matters when we listen. My name is Rob Hunter. Good night.